Steve-O, we are live. Welcome to our 2022 baseball game day semi-state preview show. And man, we got a lot of people we talked to, a lot of things we're going to go over. Steve, kind of looking back, let's reflect here a little bit. And first of all, you know, the good thing is, I'm going to start out the baseball day, by making the first error. There we go. And I made it before you caught it, Steve. So all you, any of you young kids out there that are listening in, that are playing today, don't worry about getting nervous. I'm going to make more errors than you do. I had the wrong date up there, Steve. I had June 11th, or actually, it still didn't change. I had July. There we go. Two errors, and we're still at the first at bat. There we go.
It's not
Now we
May
got the right
Madness
date.
either, right? It's June Madness. May
June
Madness
Madness.
sounds better, but June,
So
it's June.
plus it's Saturday morning.
Tournament starts in May. That's fair.
And it's Saturday morning, so I'm party the hat guy. It comes with the territory. I'm going to lead the team in errors. But looking back a little bit, a lot of people don't know that Steve and I started talking about this show before 2020. I think leading into 2020, and then that year happened. We don't really want to talk about too much, but high school was always the thing we wanted to focus on. Obviously we want to cover baseball as much as we can at every level across the state. But here we are on episode 20, actually, and just a little reflection, and I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Steve. I'm going to ask you a question that I asked you on our very first episode, and I'll give my answer as well. And the question is, what excites you about high school baseball? You're probably, you've talked to more people across the state. You cover baseball more than anybody in the state. It's tickled to death when you interviewed a hat guy back in, what was that, 2019, and ever since you've probably interviewed 400 since then. What is it about high school baseball, Steve, that you like so much?
You talked about not getting nervous. Well, I mean, there's going to be some nerves. I get a little bit. I get a little bit of a twinge, and I'm long past my playing days, and I wasn't very good when I did play. But when the game is tight, I know it's coming down to the end of the game, and that's pretty cool, And you can only imagine the excitement that the teams are feeling, the players and the fans and the coaches, and that's a lot of fun. You see how the communities are getting all charged up about this. Some have been to this stage, the semi-state, many times. Some haven't been here before. And all five of the 16 teams that are still left haven't even played, in the semi-state, or they haven't got it on. They haven't gone to the state finals, and some haven't gone to the semi-state at all. So that's pretty special.
It is. And, we could probably have a whole show, just you and I talking about what's so special about the game of baseball, generally speaking. I was talking to a lot of coaches. We talked to a lot of coaches this week. And, one I got to kind of highlight is Coach Kramer at Terre Haute South. We did short interviews. You'll see when we do them here later. And, but the interview that you see there's a few of them where we use Coach Kramer's input on, and they're about maybe 4 or 5 minutes apiece, but the interview was like 45 minutes, and because we just sit there and talked baseball. As far as what I like about it, I think high school baseball to me is unique, and I've mentioned this a few times, and it's special to me for a lot of reasons. Going back, Indiana is a fairly rural state still. Um, so growing up in rural Indiana, right on the Illinois line, surrounded by cornfields and trees and woods, the only baseball around was high school baseball. And of course, back in the 70s with, the rabbit ears, you young kids don't know what that means, but with the rabbit ears on the TV, and, you only get two stations, that's why everybody's a Cubs fan. You'd get WGN and then maybe the local station. And so the baseball I had to see was my older brothers in high school baseball, and I was actually talking to Coach Kramer about that too, because he's from the area as well, and I knew all the stats of all those players. So from an early age, I was drawn towards high school baseball, but now I think it's more than that. I think baseball, when you watch, and obviously I'm a professional baseball fan. Not so much this year, being that I'm a Reds guy. Me and Sweet Lou are both in mourning. But the it's when you watch a professional game, it's such a science, and it's a beautiful science. Don't get me wrong, but it's you watch a high school game and it's still humble. The kids still make errors. And while that might make the coaches pull their hair out and make it turn gray, from a fan perspective, that humanity of the game is what makes it so amazing to me. And we're going to see that in semi-states, and next week in the state finals, you're going to
Yeah.
see errors.
One, yeah, one of my favorite memories is, when the number 9 hitter who's hitting a buck 88 comes in and gets the game winning hit, they win a championship. I've seen that more than a few times. So that, just be the 4 hitter hitting 400 and with 10 home runs and 40 RBIs, you kind of expect him to come through, but that doesn't mean he'll be the hero.
Right. And I remember you telling me that story, and that you followed that with one of the lines that that is your career, and that is that everybody has a story. And that's that's what everybody around the state follows you for, is because you tell it like no other with the pen and everything else. Let's do a little housekeeping here before we start getting to the matchups. First of all, Steve, I'm looking outside right now here in the Hat Cave, and it's not exactly sunny out. So put on your weatherman's hat there, and give us a little forecast.
I,
What's it going to look like?
yeah, I should ask you to get me a green screen, but we'll make do with my office here. Uh, there are 4 sites: LaPorte, Kokomo, Mooresville, and Jasper. Looks like at the beginning of the day, most of these tournaments are going to start anywhere from 11 to 1 local time. And LaPorte, it's going to be 73 with a chance of 70 degrees at 11 a.m. when it starts. It's noon Eastern time. They're in the Central Time Zone. But there's a chance of showers at 4 o'clock. Kokomo, much the same, 73 and cloudy at 1. And at 5 o'clock, thunderstorms are a chance. Mooresville, the same thing. It's cloudy and 71 at noon. This is weather.com. I'm getting this information from. At 5, scattered thunderstorms are possible. And in Jasper, it's going to be mostly cloudy around 70 degrees. Looks like all day into the night. So I don't see anything about precipitation at Jasper, but it's a possibility. So we do our anti-rain dance and we don't get any rain, but it looks like game 2 at 3 of these 4 sites is a possibility.
Well,
So just
the games are
let's just play
scheduled kind
tight
of.
90-minute games and then miss that rain.
That's right. You players, remember that. Let's be on the hop. Be on the hop. In and out of the dugout. Let's get them in before the rain goes. A couple other housekeeping items here, and thank you, Steve, for the today's weather report. Couple reminders. First of all, we're heading into state finals. We announced it a couple weeks ago. The BAI 9. That is our daunting task, and we've talked to coaches all over the state. We're looking at stats. We're crunching numbers more than the accountant on tax day, but we are going to pick the top 9 players in the state of Indiana, any class, any grade, any position. They could all be in the same position. We're not picking one per position, and it is grade independent, so they could be sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and we are and freshmen qualify as well. And we have them all on our radar, and we've talked to a lot of coaches. And we're going to announce it after the state finals. before the North-South All-Star game. And Steve, maybe you can give us a little report on that too. We also have the Futures game coming up. We're going to announce them that week after state finals, and everybody who gets awarded with the 9 players who are part of the BAI 9 for 2022 get a custom wooden bat made by Gandalf Bats. Like I mentioned in previous episodes, that's made by Tom Gandalf. He's the son of Coach Gandalf, who's now currently at Cecina. Previously, he's he's an Indiana Baseball Hall of Famer. Spent many years at Center Grove, and that's the area where these bats are actually made, and they are sweet. I got to look at them. So, coaches, not too late. We've got everybody on the radar, and we've been crunching numbers. But if there's someone that you definitely need us to look deep on, hit us up. Get us up on Twitter or email so we make sure no stone goes unturned in finding the top 9 players in the state of Indiana. Also, a couple other things. Our normal hours, our normal show airs on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock. Every week, but being that this is our big week, our big month, really, with everything going on. So obviously today, and then next Friday, which is the first day of the state finals, we're going to have a morning show Friday morning and another morning show Saturday morning. So we're going to preview the Friday state final games, and we're going to preview the Saturday state final games, and on Saturday mornings. And then for the 19th, June 19th, that is Father's Day, and we have a special Father's Day show that we're going to air at 8 o'clock that evening. So after you've had all your big Father's Day dinner and everything, coaches, 8 o'clock, baseballacrossindiana.com for a really neat Father's Day special that we've been working on for a while. We've talked to like Josh Van Meter and his dad, for example, is just one example. And we've talked to a lot of people for what I think is going to be a really neat special, because at the end of the day, I think there's a special kind of relationship, especially between fathers and sons, but fathers and their kids, and that ties into baseball. And we're going to try to touch on that a little bit with an hour-long special on Father's Day. So, Steve, what do you think? You want to start talking about the semi-state matchups as we get started? Let's start with the end game. Where does everybody want to be? Right now, we're in 4 places all over the state, but here's the end game. Here's where you want to be. Now, a few weeks ago, Steve and I took a little effort and picked what we thought would be our state champions. Steve, let's look at our scoreboard here and see who we got left. This is who we picked, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago it was? Cowan and you picked Cowan in 1A. I picked Riverton Park. They're out. Cowan went farther than my Riverton Park did. Matter of fact, we've got the Cowan's coaches on our show today. We talked to him about some of the people that are in the semi-state. Now you still have Wapahani though. You've got Wapahani left. I was actually talking to Reed and Coach Estep at University today. I got to talk to them because they weren't playing today. Then the 3A games, those were, you look at this right here, and what this gets at, obviously Steve and I were just having fun with this, but what it gets at is, baseball is alive in Indiana. And, every coach I talk to says the same thing, that Indiana is a hidden gem when it comes to producing baseball talent year in and year out. And not just that, the baseball industry in Indiana is alive. You look at our minor league facilities, there's nothing minor about them. Victory Field here in Indianapolis for the Indians. Of course, you have Tin Caps where they play I was going to say Four Winds, that's South Bend. Steve, help me out, I just went blank. Parkview Field in Fort Wayne, sorry, Tin Caps, and that and Four Winds Field in South Bend, home of the South Bend Cubs, every year win awards for the single A baseball fields all across the country. So I mean, Indiana and baseball they go hand in hand. It is lively scene. Now we talked about what the end game is. Well, a few weeks ago we started out with 384 teams. That was the officially IHSAA sanctioned number of teams that started the tournament this year, and now we're down to just these. This is what we're going to talk about for the rest of the show. And, just looking at this, Steve, let's talk about the locations here real quick, and then we'll go right into the 4A. We're going to go with so that you can coordinate with you here the Columbus East and Cathedral game we're going to talk about first, and then the Zionsville Penn game, and it'll be kind of that order all the way around. But looking at this, where are you going to be today is the first question.
I'm going to be at LaPorte at Schreiber Field.
Schreiber Field up in LaPorte, and we talked about this at last year on our Semi-State show, because at the very north of the state at LaPorte, there was a big sign. And Steve, is it still there, that big sign that says, "Welcome to LaPorte, the baseball capital of Indiana"?
Absolutely.
That sign is still there. And then if you go to the opposite side of the state, who is also hosting a semi-state today, Jasper, Ruxer Field, well, there's an article a few years back, actually, by the Indianapolis Star that said, "How did Jasper become the baseball capital of Indiana?" We talked about that early on before the season started, as where the heart of baseball is in Indiana, and I don't think you can pick one place. It's I'm looking at these places where the semi-states are: Kokomo, Mooresville, LaPorte, and Jasper, and all four of them have a rich, rich history. Now, weatherman, you talked about a little bit of rain. So that comes into the last thing we want to mention about the semi-state matchups today, and that is we have two fields with artificial turf and then two fields natural grass, one on each side of the state. On the north side of the state, you have Kokomo there at Municipal Stadium, beautiful Municipal Stadium where the Kokomo Jackrabbits play. And that's artificial turf. And then on the south side of the state, you have Mooresville. Now, Mooresville's, I think, the newest turf, and it's really high-tech stuff. They said after a downpour, you can sweep it and be playing baseball in 10 minutes. So the weather might not come into play too much there, but I think it's really the north part of the state you were saying that has the highest potential for it. But if it's, and I think you even said Kokomo probably had the biggest chance of rain, but I think with that kind of field, I think we'll be okay. Maybe we could worry about LaPorte, but it's a beautiful grass field for sure. So I'm not getting into the grass versus turf argument. That gets too political for this show. But so Steve, let's go into and let's start talking about these semi-state matchups. Here we go. Let's talk 4A first. And in the 4A bracket, we are looking at Columbus East versus Cathedral is going to be in Mooresville, and then Zionsville versus Penn is in LaPorte. Steve, talk to us about the coaches. Let's look at that Columbus East versus Cathedral matchup first. Give us some stats to talk about, or give us some information about these two teams, their coaches, and fill us in here.
Well, Columbus East, the Olympians, had an up and down season, but they got hot at the right time. They come in 15, 16, and 1, and Indianapolis Cathedral 17, 10, and 2. So both of these teams are not ranked, but they got it going when they needed to. This game is the second game at Mooresville. The 2A game is at 1 o'clock. So this game will be around 4 maybe. John Gratz is the coach at Columbus East. Columbus East won the Bloomington South Sectional. They beat Bloomington North, Bloomington South to win that. They went to the Jasper Regional and they beat Mooresville, which is saying something because Mooresville was ranked second at the time. and then they beat New Albany. That was a 3-2 game. They've won 20 sectionals, 11 regionals, and the last time they won the semi-state was 2019, and that was their fourth title. And they won the state championship that year.
Yeah.
That was quite an exciting game. Dan still talks about that. Indianapolis Cathedral, lots of history there. Ed Freege is the head coach of the Fighting Irish. They won the Pike sectional by beating Lawrence North Pike and Lawrence Central. Yeah, Lawrence Central Pike and Lawrence North. Then they won the New Pal Regional. They beat Anderson and New Pal. They've won 25 sectional titles, 15 regionals. They won the semi-state last in 2018. That was their seventh title. They made 8 state finals appearances. You wonder why that number is different than the semi-state titles. For a while there, they were having the semifinals at the state finals. They had a different format than they do now. They went with that in the early 2000s for a few years. They won 3 state titles, 2001, 2007, 2017. So lots of history and momentum going with the Olympians and the Fighting Irish.
I'll tell you, this is, and I was pulling up a note I had on this. First of all, what I like about this is two great men. I mean, these are just two great, upstanding guys, the kind of guys you want leading your team. If you're a parent leading your kids' team, but you look at that the regional that Cathedral went through, and that was an underrated regional as far as how the quality of teams are in there. Everybody was talking about that, sectional 8 with Zionsville and Westfield and Noblesville and all the Fishers and all them. And everybody was talking about the Center Grove sectional with Center Grove and Mooresville and all them. Well, these two teams, they weren't in that one. Columbus had to go through the regional that was the product of that Center Grove sectional. But you're talking New Pal, who New Pal was, they were legit. They were a strong team this year, as well as you mentioned who's the other one there, New Pal, and I had it on my notes here.
Well, Anderson they beat in the first game, and Anderson, has a tradition of success, and they had a little bit of a lull, maybe you could call it, and then they were right there, and got into the regional.
Well, the Columbus East is another one, and we're going to talk to the Coach Magea we're talking to him from Mooresville, but then we're also talking to the coach for Columbus. Yeah, for Columbus North, and a few others about these two teams. And the one thing to take away on this Columbus East is if you look at that record, that's a sub 500 record, and that's just that is just baseball. That is what I love about it, because when we said it at the start of the tournament that everybody is 0-0, and one thing that I like about Columbus East, and this is what I was trying to remember, was that they, and one of the coaches even said this, they find a way to win. They tied Center Grove at the beginning of the year, and then they've got some good wins on their resume, and they just find a way to win. They may not have people at the top of the PBR stat rankings or anything like that, but they've got good quality players, and they play all 7 innings, and it's a fun version of ball to watch. So we talked to some people about these two teams, about this matchup, and let's give it a listen.
They don't have a ton of guys that are going to jump off the screen if you're looking at it on paper, but Ethan Ileana is a really good pitcher. I know Boyer is also a very good pitcher for them. And they just have guys who are, they're scrappy, they're competitive, they're scrappy. And that's something that being in Columbus this first year, I've learned both East and North, very competitive, very scrappy. So definitely like
So he's cutting out there a little bit.
they don't have a ton of guys that are going to jump jump off the screen if you're looking at it on paper. But Ileana is a really good pitcher. I know Boyer is also a very good pitcher for them. And they just have guys who are they're scrappy. They're competitive. They're scrappy, and that's something that I've being in Columbus this first year. I've learned both East and North, very competitive, very scrappy, tough group of kids and people in the community. So definitely like that on both sides. So yeah, they like you said, they don't have guys that are going to jump off the page at you when you're looking at stats or anything like that. But you hit it on the head. They find a way to win, and they're in close type ball games, and that's what it's about. Good teams find a way to win.
Outstanding coach. I've watched him from afar. Coach has done just an outstanding job. A few years ago, they went to the state finals with a really good team. To be frank with you, this team is not nearly as talented as that group a few years ago, but they play extremely well together. The starting pitcher, I believe Ileana, locates 3 pitches for strikes: fastball, breaking ball, changeup. He can elevate the fastball at will. He does a really good job of getting a lot of swing throughs with hitters. Outstanding competitor. I thought their catcher was really good, especially blocking the ball. Good throw and catch guy. Shortstop made all the plays. Center fielder was coming back from injury. Couldn't hit, but could play defense. He ran down a few balls against us. But I really thought what made the difference in our game was Ileana was able to keep the game close for them. We made a few mistakes. Their DH, who had 2 or 3 really big hits for them, came through in the 8th inning with a big 2-out triple, and he ended up scoring on a hit right after that. They just are gritty. They hang around, and they find ways of winning games in the end. And that's a testament to the coaching staff. That's a testament to them as players. Just a real grinded out type of group that, to be frank with you, just really, I thought as the game went on, kind of leaned on us a little bit to where we made mistakes at the end, and they didn't make those crucial mistakes. And as disappointing as I am for us not being able to move on, you have to respect and be happy for them, because they were able to make plays through the course of the game and also make plays at the end that were able to catapult them into the championship game of the regional, where they were able to beat a very good New Albany team 3-2. So hats off to Columbus East. I wish them well moving forward, and really a well-deserved, well-coached ball club.
Coach Freege does a fantastic job. His players are always ready to play. They're mentally tough. They're going to play really, really good defense, and they won't beat themselves. They're really strong. We saw the Hazlitt kid, and he was outstanding. Kind of a bulldog type guy that is just going to come after you. And they're not going to get scared. They're going to play hard, and they're going to get after it. We have the utmost respect for Cathedral.
I know they're going up against Cathedral. We played them twice, and I believe East has played them one time in the regular season too. So it's definitely going to be a good matchup, because both teams and coaches have been in a semi-state game before, and have each have won a semi-state game and gotten to state. So I think it's definitely going to be a good game, and it's going to be some good baseball whenever it's this late and you got 2 teams with experience in those positions. It's going to be fun to watch. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to any postseason game with whichever team is who wins the freebie game. Whichever team makes the least mistakes and is able to take advantage of the mistakes other teams make, I think whoever is able to do that is going to be the team that comes out on top in that game for sure. They don't have a ton of,
going with what Coach, what he said there, that's a good point in that, how many state finals have we seen where it came down to defense? And whether that won the game or lost the game in a few cases. But, they're both saying the same thing. This is going to be a great matchup because a lot of history there between these in the historic franchises, and it's going to be a good one. And that is going to be at Mooresville, and that's where I'm going to be. So I'm going to be catching this game. And then let's go to the other 4A semi-state. That's going to be up in LaPorte. And we've got Zionsville versus the Penn Kingsmen. And these guys, they've been there too. So give us the skinny on Zionsville and Penn.
That's the second game at LaPorte. The first game, the 2A game, is at 11 Central or noon Eastern time. So this game would be about 3 hours later, probably 2 o'clock local time, maybe 3 o'clock. Zionsville's 22-12. Penn is actually 24-6. Penn has won the semi-state 5 times. The last time was in 17. Zionsville has won it once, and that was in 2016. They won the state championship that year. Penn has been in the state championship game, the state finals 5 times, and they won 4. 94, 98, 2001, and 2015 were those titles. Zionsville is coached by Jared Moore. The Eagles won the Noblesville sectional. And we keep talking about the Hoosier Crossroads Conference and what that looks like up there, and those teams beating up on each other. That has something to say with the 12 losses. And here they are, 1 game from being in the state finals. They beat Noblesville 5-4, Westfield 3-2, and then Fishers 6-0 to win the Noblesville sectional. Then they went to Lafayette and won the Jeff Regional. They beat Harrison, and then they beat a very good Homestead team. That was their 15th sectional and their 4th regional title. Penn has a lot of success. Greg Dicus is the coach of the Kingsmen. He's an Indiana High School Baseball Coaches Association Hall of Famer. They won the Penn sectional by beating Elkhart, Warsaw, and Northridge. And then they won the LaPorte Regional. So they have the distinction of having played on the same field last week. They beat South Bend Adams, which is an NIC team. And then they beat Lake Central in a very close ball game. It was a walk-off. Mm-hmm. Zach David was the hero. 23 sectional titles for Penn, 11 regionals. Their last semi-state was in 17, and that was their 4th one. So a lot of history, a lot of good baseball from the Eagles and the Kingsmen.
Yeah, this will be a good one. You've got Jared Moore there at Zionsville, just a brain. I mean, he is a lot of good things that we're going to hear in an interview. A lot of good things were said about him and talking to other coaches. And of course, Dicus is just, he's in the Hall of Fame for a reason. Just a funny story involving Coach Dicus is, Steve, you were involved with it. We were at the Hall of Fame induction banquet there back in 2019 it was, and sitting at the table for dinner is, Hardy the hat guy. You look over to the right, and you got Coach Dicus is sitting right there. You go in front of me was Coach Jones of Edgewood, who had just been to the state finals that year and lost to Andrean. And, he's got 500 wins. Dicus is right there. To my left is Coach Terry at South Vermilion, who has 600 wins. And I said, coaches, between the 4 of us, we have about 1,200 wins. Now, I've got none of them. but between the four of us, we had about, I was sitting at a table with 1,200 wins there, so that was pretty neat. Aside from the my attempt of being funny, but yeah, this is going to be a great matchup. Let's take a listen here. We talked to a few coaches that have played these teams. Let's give it a listen.
When we played them, we were undefeated, so we were trying to win a conference championship, but they got us. They beat us 14-4. They do the little things right. That's big for them. They field the ball, they hit the ball, they do what they're supposed to do. They jump on you. You cannot fall behind against a team like them.
Air three of the day, Steve. Let's listen to Coach Smolinski again here.
Um, One guy that stood, when we played them, we were undefeated, so we were trying to win a conference championship, but they got us. They beat us 14-4. They do the little things right. That's big for them. They field the ball, they hit the ball, they do what they're supposed to do. They jump on you. You cannot fall behind against a team like them. One guy that stood out against us was Ben Gregory, and last year he was our conference player of the year. This year he played first base for them and pitched some, but I mean in our game he was 4 for 4. So every single at bat was just great. They have elite pitching. We faced Schatzow. He's a great arm, and he only gave up 4 hits against us.
The thing about Penn, it's the same Penn. Greg Dykes has been there forever. They're going to have great pitching. They're going to be able to swing it. They're going to pound the baseball, it seems like, over the years. But, traditionally, they're another one of those powers where they can score runs and they put pressure on the defense. But their pitching is pretty good as well, from what I understand.
Coach Dykes is an absolute competitor. He expects the best out of his players. And fortunately and unfortunately, they're in our conference. So every year we have to play them. So, we have to always have our best to go up against them. And just that Penn name alone, teams have that fear factor. And that's the one thing you can't worry about when you play against an opponent like that. But what an unbelievable coach and mentor. He's been a part of Penn for as long as I can remember. When I played for St. Joe, playing against him and now coaching against him, it's just an honor always.
Jared's one of my best friends. He's an outstanding human being. I know he cares for his guys so much and loves on them and wants to see them succeed and fights for them. And so he gets those guys rallied, to compete for each other. And they're playing right now with a chip on their shoulder and a lot of confidence and some swag about them. And I think that comes from him and how he's just calm and laid back and handles his team, expecting the most out of them, but encouraging them. And he gets his guys ready to play. When I think they won sectionals 16, 17, 18, made the state finals in 17, and we're in the Final Four. And made the state finals in 16. We're in the Final Four in 17. So he's another one. They just continue to win, and I think that comes from the culture and the mindset that he's established there in Centerville. Well, obviously their arms. Again, Dixon's just a handful on the mound. For a high school hitter to be able to be prepared to face 4 pitches with different breaks, different movements in the zone. Our guys struggle. High school hitters in general struggle enough with fastball and then one off-speed pitch, and you're trying to be on time for 4 different ones, and he'll throw them at any count at any time. He can throw them for strikes or get them out of the zone for swing and misses. So he's really, really tough. And then if you do get to him or he's having an off day, then they just have 5, 6 arms that they can go to that are equally as talented. So definitely on the mound. But I think they started the year like 8 and 9. They got swept in a conference series to go 8 and 9. And then since then they've just won. They just started rolling. And a lot of that's just the confidence at the plate they have right now. There's a lot of, swag, for lack of a better word, that you that you're in for a day whenever they get to the park, just the way they carry themselves and how they approach their at-bats in the batter's box. Their leadoff guys, Colin Price and Brody Chrisman, they're not easy outs. They'll foul off pitches, they'll grind out at-bats. And so you're instantly, trying to, there's someone on base and you're instantly trying to like battle out of an inning to start the game. And then you just feel the rest of the game, like every at bat is just so crucial when you're facing them because once they get some momentum and get some energy and you have that swag about them, get a base runner, then they're just really, really tough in the batter's box and they kind of feed off each other. So yeah, they're a complete team right now. The pitching has been there most of the year, but now they're starting to hit it. Chrisman has been on fire. He had 2 home runs against us, and one was on a decent slider. Oppo left center field, and then he pulled a fastball to right center field. So he's playing with a ton of confidence right now. And then the rest of the guys are just awesome team guys. Max Bond behind the plate picked off a guy at third in their first sectional game, threw out a couple base runners in the sectional, and blocked some incredible pitches with runners in scoring position. Like they're just playing together. But I think it starts on the mound and then it's carried over now offensively. They're starting to get hot, or they've been hot, and that's kind of taking them into this deep run.
When we played them,
Yeah, they're Zionsville is definitely, everybody says they want to get to the playoffs hot, and they are right now. And I saw them play. I don't know if you've seen them play or not yet this year, Steve. I got a chance to see them play a couple times, and they threw. I call it the 3-headed ace. They pitch by rotation, and they've got enough arms, especially, and that's why the semi-state round is just dangerous because now one good pitcher can get you through, and they've got 4 or more. He talked about Dixon. You've got Brody Chrisman on the team. As far as their standouts, Aiden Hatcher, Aiden Fitzsimmons, Chase Wagner. I mean, they're loaded top to bottom, and senior loaded as well. They no-hit Cathedral this year with that 3-headed ace, I call it. Then they went up to Lafayette and threw a no-hitter up there the same way. So they're like Coach Cherry said, their arms have been strong all year. Now they got their bats going. It's going to be a difficult contest for Penn, but Penn's up to the challenge. Obviously, that's why they're there. And looking at our predictions at the beginning of the year, we've got one left. So that's why they play the game, right, Steve?
Yes, sir.
And let's look at the 3A. And in Jasper, we have the Silver Creek Dragons, and man, they've been on fire lately too, and they've got a daunting task. They're going to face the Duke, Andrew Dukanich of Brebeuf. And Newcastle down in Kokomo is going up against the juggernaut of Andrean. I've talked about this Newcastle team all year. I've been a fan of them all year, just because they've been kind of under the radar. I mean, all 4 of these teams are just exciting to watch. This 3A bracket is strong. And so, Steve, tell us a little bit about the history of these 4 teams and how they got here.
Well, since we started in the South last time in the 4A, let's start South for 3A. Jasper, beautiful Ruxer Field. For what it's worth, this is the 5th ranked Silver Creek and number 4 Brebeuf. Last coach's poll, Silver Creek is 29-6 and Brebeuf is 25-4. Silver Creek is coached by Joe Decker. They won the Madison sectional. They beat Brownstown Central, Scottsburg, and Corydon Central in the process. They went to the Southridge Regional, got to play at beautiful Lake Stadium. They beat Connorsville and Evansville Memorial. They've got 11 sectionals and 3 regional titles to their credit. They won the semi-state in 2018 for the first time, only time. They won the state championship that same year. Brebeuf, Jeff Scott is the coach of the Braves. They won the Danville sectional. They beat Greencastle, Danville, and Tri-West Hendricks. They beat a very good West Vigo team in the semifinals at the Danville Regional, and then they beat Beech Grove in the final. They've got 16 sectional titles, 5 regional crowns. Their 1 semi-state title came in 2012. That is the Dragons and the Braves.
Pretty good matchup here, and we're going to hear from some coaches that played them both. And when I think of Silver Creek, I think of the great youth program that they have. They're down there in the south near New Albany, and Little League is still going strong down there, and just a great feeder program from kids in their community that come up through the high school. It's a great story. I love how they run because it's really a program. It's not just a team that you try to come out for. They're starting them young, and it's shown because Silver Creek has been strong for the last 5 to 10 years. And of course, Brebeuf, everybody talks about Andrew Dukanich. He could be a top 20 draft pick this year. Of course, he's committed with Vanderbilt, but we'll see how the draft takes him there. And but don't take my word for it. Let's hear from some of the coaches who have played these two juggernauts, starting with Coach O'Neill, who knows something about having a good pitcher on his team. Of course, Pat O'Neill was the coach of Brownsburg when Lance Lynn, Drew Storen, Tucker Barnhart, that whole crew went through there. So he knows a little something about riding a good pitcher through the state finals. Let's give it a listen.
Obviously, when you think about Brebeuf, first thing that kind of comes to mind is Andrew Dukanich. When you think about Andrew Dukanich, what comes to mind here? What's the challenge?
Well, the challenge is over because Sucker's a senior and graduating, so I'm so glad. Duke's one of the best pitchers I've ever seen in high school level. When you can throw 95 to 98 anytime you want, and then throw your 90-mile-an-hour slider on the black, and then all of a sudden here comes a 78-mile-an-hour curveball that buckles your knees on a consistent basis, that's tough to beat. So really proud to know that we competed against them. Brebeuf's a real good team. I told Coach he has a chance to win it all this year, and with a good defense behind them. And they've got speed, and defense is good enough. But when you got Duke on the mound, you got Reed on the mound, left-hander, throws 90, 92. But they also have, I believe, Bauer. He throws upper 80s. So they're pretty well set there. Pretty well set.
We played Silver Creek this year, and they're another team that's extremely well coached. Decker does a fantastic job as well, and his kids, they come to play. It was a really good game, and we enjoyed playing them. They're never going to beat themselves. So you're looking at a game that's probably going to be decided by whoever hits last, and if somebody happens to flinch. But out of those two, you may expect an extra inning ball game.
Obviously, when you think about
Coming from a guy who knows a little bit of something about it there, Coach Estep there at University, and and Coach O'Neill laying it out on it's not just about Dukanich. That they've got Reed, I believe, made the North-South All-Star game, and he's their number 2.
Reed.
Yep. So I mean, it's not just about one pitcher there. We were talking about Zionsville, how they don't have to rely on one pitcher. Well, neither does Brebeuf, and that's important. It is more than just one player. A neat thing about Brebeuf, I'll mention real quick before we get into Newcastle and Andrea. Talking to Coach Scott at the beginning of the year at the IHSBCA clinic, he has a really neat program. He runs a leadership program for his players, and we talked to him earlier in the year about that, and it's just a really good program. It has nothing to do with baseball, directly, but it's just another example of a great idea from these great coaches across our state. And that's I'm a cheerleader of that, just as much of a cheerleader of how good the coaches are across our state, as much as I am on the quality of baseball that's being played throughout our state, because I think they're both at a high level. But the reason for that is in no small part due to not only the coaches that are in the playoffs, but the coaches that were, kind enough to give us interviews here. These guys are they know baseball, but they're good men too, and it's assuring that baseball is in good hands, going forward with all these good young coaches out there, and that's something that Coach Jennings was talking about. when he was on our show last week in the Final Out, when he sees all these young coaches out there, and baseball is in good hands in Indiana. And this matchup we go to right now, if I can segue, is a perfect example. You have Newcastle, who I have been a fan of all year long. Coach Cooper's he's a new head coach. But he's been with the Newcastle program for a long time, so he knows the kids. And we're actually going to talk to Coach King, who spent years at Newcastle, now the head coach of Mount Vernon of Fortville. And then, of course, you've got Andrean, which, the legend. Steve, tell us a little bit about these programs and give us some stats that people need to know going into today.
This game will be the second game at Kokomo. The first game is at 1 o'clock, so this game will be around 4. Newcastle is 18-5-1. Andrean is ranked number 1. They're 29-4. You say, why did the 59ers play so many more games than the Trojans? Well, the 59ers, Andrean went south. They went to Tennessee, started their season, got several games in. Rain was really a factor for Newcastle. They lost like 9 games to rainouts. They played 5 on their own field because we're renovating it. And they played most of their home games at Shenandoah. And they were very thankful that Shenandoah let them do that. Shout out to Coach Ryan Painter. Josh Cooper, the head coach of the Trojans, you said he knew the players, been coaching most of these players since they were 7 years old, or coaching against them. He wasn't coaching, he wasn't the head coach or even in the program directly until 1 week before the season. There were, a shake-up there. He took over, but he knows these kids very well. What motivates them? His son Eli is on the team, so he knows these kids very well. Newcastle won the Yorktown sectional. They beat Hamilton Heights in a close game, 4-3, Jay County 6-2, and then they beat Garin Catholic 3-2 for the title. They went to play on the new turf at Oak Hill and beat Wawasee, and then a 5-4 victory over Dwenger in their Oak Hill regional final. They've got 14 sectionals, 13 regionals, and they're looking for their first semi-state title, state finals appearance today. Now, on the other hand, Dave Pishker's been at Andrean 4 decades. He's a Hall of Famer. He's got over 1,000 victories. Andrean won the Griffith sectional. They beat Griffith, and then Calumet New Tech. Came back the next week to win the Griffith regional. They beat South Bend St. Joe. We heard from John Smolinski. And then they beat Glenn for the title. 30 sectionals and 15 regionals for the 59ers. They won their last semi-state title of 8 in 2019. Their 7 state titles have come in 05, 09, 2010, 2014, 2015, 2018, 2019. So a lot of success for the 59ers, a lot of success recently, but they're trying to get further than they've ever have, Newcastle Trojans.
That 2019 championship with Andrean won over Edgewood, man, what a game that was. All those 2019 championships were amazing, but they beat an Edgewood team that was just unreal good. So that was a good matchup. And I'll tell you what, they went through that Griffith regional, and in my opinion, that was, everybody talks about some of these other big 4A regionals. That might have been the toughest regional in the state, period. Of any level. So that was a big feat getting through that for anybody. Now we talked to Brad King, who was at Newcastle for many years, and he's now at the Mount Vernon Marauders, the Fortville Mount Vernon variety. And we talked to some others also about the opportunity or the struggle of playing Andrean, however you want to look at it. Let's give this a listen.
I know Newcastle pretty well, and if you look into their dugout, their head coach Josh Cooper, he was a freshman on my first JV team in 1995. So I'm extremely proud of Josh and what he's done this year. He stepped into a tough situation and done a really nice job. He's coached these kids for a long time at the lower levels. So really proud of what Josh has done, and he was a heck of a baseball player back in the day. And then his assistant coaches, Trey Ball played for me in 2013, and he was Mr. Baseball, number 7 pick overall. So he's done a really nice job with their pitching staff. Tyler Smith, he also played for me and graduated in 2013 as well. And then Zach Kellogg, who works with their catchers, he played for the 2014 team. He graduated in 2014 and went on to IPFW to play. So those 3 guys right there who are in the dugout, I was able to coach as well at the varsity level. And then Rodney Scott, another assistant coach, I actually played ball with him at Newcastle. I was an 89 grad. He's an 88. And we played together in 88, and we went on to play in the regional championship that year and got beat by a really good Muncie South team that went to the Final Four. So I as far as knowing the people and the community, I know it really well. Been here my entire life. So as an alum, I'm extremely proud. As a former coach, former player, everything, I'm extremely proud of what these guys are doing. I sat back and just love the fact that they're having this success, because Newcastle really deserves that. As an opposing coach now, being in the same conference, it makes it tough because we have to play twice a year. And, when we're not playing, obviously I'm rooting for them, I'm pulling for them. And I've sat back and watched this team all year. And like I said, Josh has done an incredible job with them. He's got them to compete at a high level. They're a scrappy group, and I think it starts with their leaders, and really Corbin Malott is that kind of that spark plug for them. He's a highly competitive kid. I coached his brother Grant in 2014 as well. But Corbin's just a talented player. He's going to go to Purdue and play, and he's going to have a lot of success there. But he's super competitive. You have Aiden Decker-Petty on the mound, has really good stuff. He's got good velocity. He's got good off-speed pitches. He can go extended. He's not afraid to go 110 pitches if needed, whatever it takes for the team to win. And again, he's a super competitive young man. So, and they're a senior-driven team. I mean, they're pretty much, you throw out, I think, 8 seniors during the game. And then a young man named Gavin Frazier, who's a sophomore, I believe, and he's going to do a lot of nice things for that program the next couple of years. But they're just a scrappy group. They take pitch counts deep. They will just wear your pitchers out, and try to get to that next guy and then that next guy. And they play really, really good defense, and they pitch it well. If you don't have Aiden on the hill, you've got Eli Cooper. And he does a fantastic job. And then Corbin will come in and close games out. And if you can get the lead with an inning or 2 left and bring Corbin Malott in, you can almost secure it that it's going to be a win.
Obviously, when you talk about Dave, you talk about a legend. You talk about a Hall of Famer. He's got more wins than anybody in state history in baseball. And he's our big rival. They're our big rival over the years. And this year's version of Andrean baseball, it's a club that doesn't wow you. They're not super flashy. In years past, they've had outstanding athletes, guys that can run, and they have that at the bottom of the order. They got some guys that can run. They've got quality pitching. When you talk about Andrean, obviously you talk about Drake Bowen, their third baseman, who's committed to play football and baseball at Notre Dame. When I saw him play this year, this is the first time I've ever even coached against the kid or saw the kid in person, to be honest with you. Outstanding specimen, very athletic. He's got a strong arm at the corner, smart kid, plays the game the right way. Just a good all-around tough kid. They've got a nice shortstop in Barth. He's a freshman, and he's going to be a good one. This is a very physical club, very strong. You can see that they've got a nice weight program going on over there. Whether they do it at the school or with personal trainers, I don't know. They've got the Kalemba kid behind the plate. I think he's a St. Rita transfer out of Chicago. Outstanding arm, strong, big kid. They've got a kid back at first base now by the name of Harder. And he was a transfer student from Lowell. And, he finally became eligible at the end of the year. Lowell didn't release him. and he's a kid that gives them some pop on the left side playing first base. They probably have 4 or 5 guys that are 6'3 and a half, 6'4". Just an outstanding club. They've got a great pitcher as well in Peyton Nix. Nixich is a kid who maybe 84 to 86. Really does a nice job spotting his fastball on the outside part of the plate. He'll come inside on occasion. Outstanding slider, almost like a sweeping slider. He does a nice job on the mound. He's going to Purdue Northwest for them. And they've got the Wacoliak kid who actually pitched in the championship, or I should say in the first game of the regionals, to get to Nixich in the championship. And Nixich is their number 1. Dave, who's been known to do this over time, over the years, went with their number 2 in the first ball game of the morning that in the regionals against South Bend St. Joe. A big kid as well. These guys, they don't beat themselves. Against us in the sectionals, Dan, they didn't walk a guy. And obviously come tournament time, you can't give up free bases. Defensively, they don't make very many errors, if at all. I think they're a club that offensively are susceptible to the breaking ball. They didn't necessarily pound it all over the field in their victory over us, but they took advantage of some mistakes. And come tournament time, offensively, you got to be able to hit with 2 outs, and you've got to be able to hit with runners in scoring position. And Andrean can do that. They're very fundamentally sound. They'll foul off pitches until they get the pitch they want. And again, they're not super flashy, but they're very fundamentally sound.
Well, I tell you, no one can give a scoop on a team like Coach Jennings, Skinny. He's one of the best, and he's retired this year from coaching anyway. He's still there at Griffith High School in an administrative role, I believe, and I was glad to hear that he's still going to be in the announcing gig. He's probably still going to do one of the state finals, and nobody does it better. So I was glad to get some input from him. As we move to 2A, it is 9 o'clock. We're getting closer to game time. Some players are probably just now getting up and at them. I think Max Clark's already got 2-mile run in and everything else. But for those the casual fans like us, we've got 2 more rounds to go here. The 2A bracket, which is one that I really like. I said at the beginning of the year this would be the most dynamic of all 4 classes in baseball, and it lived up to it. The reason I'm going to Mooresville is for that Linton-Stockton and Centerville game. I think that's very intriguing game to say the least. But Steve, give us a little background on the Linton Miners, the Centerville Bulldogs, Wapahani Raiders, and the Iliana Vikings. One team that a lot of people might not have heard of.
Let's start with the South. Linton-Stockton is 15-9-1. Play a very good schedule. So nine losses. Those are against some legitimate teams. Centerville is 20-5. They're ranked 7th in the final poll. Linton-Stockton is coached by Jacob Harden, 2015 Northview graduate. This is his first season. They won the Mitchell sectional. They beat South Knox, North Knox, and then an 8-7 win against Mitchell for the title. They played in the Modern Day Regional. They beat North Decatur and a very good Forest Park team, 5-4, to win that title. They've got 11 sectionals. They're coming off their first regional title last weekend. So make some history there in Linton. They're very excited down there. You look at social media, that'll tell you all you need to know. Centerville is coached by Tracy Krall. They won their own sectional, Centerville sectional, by beating Shenandoah and Hagerstown. They won the Park Tudor Regional. They beat Cascade and Heritage Christian. They won their 9th sectional title and regional number 1. So they are looking for semi-state title number 1, state finals appearance number 1, and they want to win their state title. So
man, they went through a good bracket too.
Bulldogs and Miners.
Yeah, that Centerville went through a really good bracket, man. A lot of their stock is high right now because they went through that tough bracket, and everybody I've talked to says, man, this team is legit. So that's going to be a good game right there. Tell us about that Kokomo semi-state.
You got number 3 Wapahani 24-4, and unranked Iliana Christian 20-7. Game is set for 1:00 Eastern time. Wapahani, coached by the Raiders, Brian Dudley, a Hall of Famer, been there 4 decades. They won the Frankton sectional. They beat LaPel, Monroe Central, and Frankton. They can win close games, or they can hit the ball. I've seen them play once this season. They can hit the ball for sure. It was 15-10 in the Frankton, 15-10 in the Frankton game. I've seen a lot of those kind of games, and I've seen 1-0 games. So we'll see what we see. Carroll Flora Regional went to Wapahani. They beat Eastern Greentown, and then they beat Carroll Flora. And Carroll Flora and Wapahani shared time at the top of the poll this year.
Yeah, talk about another tough one.
Wapahani has won 18 sectionals and 8 regionals, 3 semi-state titles. The last one was in 2017. They won a state title in 2014. Now, Iliana Christian, the Vikings, they have been, with that name, you think Illinois and Indiana, right? That's where they get their name. They got their start in Lansing, Illinois, in the mid 40s. That school did. They were very successful in the Illinois Association, and this is their second year as a full IHSAA member. So their first sectional and regional titles came this year. They won the Whiting sectional. They beat Bowen Academy, Hammond, Bishop, Knoll, and Wheeler. They won the Whiting Regional. They beat Winnemac and Eastside. Jeff Vanderwood, who's a alum when the school was on the other side of the state line, and he's got a long, long history in baseball. His son is on the team. You'll see in this tournament yet, and then in the All-Star Series, a lot of father-sons combinations. And then I think that's
a lot of good things said about Coach Vanderwood too there of Iliana. And well, you know, I was thinking about this as I see Wapahani. Of course, Coach Dudley won his 800th win this year. And who was some of the other ones that had big milestones? Of course, Pishker, all-time winningest coach in Indiana. It's a lot of big names in this state finals this year, and the Wapahani was the big one that reminded me of that. But let's hear about this Mooresville sectional right here. This is where I'm going to be. Coach Harden, you know, he brought out that cool Miners hat this year. They've got that logo on the back of their hats. I still need to get one of them, Coach. But they are playing a tough. What's that?
Got a beard.
What's that?
He looks a little bit like that Miner when he wears a beard.
Yeah. He's a fun, lively guy too, and we're going to hear about that here in a second because one of the things as we get ready to listen to Coach Kramer of Terre Haute South, he talks about Linton-Stockton, Shakamak, Tecumseh, all these little schools, and one thing you're going to hear from him on a couple different videos that we're going to play where he's in is just that strength of schedule that these 1A and 2A teams are playing. And it's just that common denominator. And, Linton-Stockton, I've been talking about them all year. Matter of fact, if you follow our show all year, you're probably sick of hearing me talk about the Southwestern Indiana Athletic Conference and how much I'm a fan of that conference, with Linton-Stockton, Shakamak, of course, North Davies, Clay City broke the top 10 this year too. But they're going up against a juggernaut here in Centerville. So let's hear for some coaches who have played these two great teams.
I have great relationships with a lot of these head coaches. Jacob Harden, as you mentioned, first-year coach. He was an assistant coach for the Rex last year. A.J. Reed was the head coach, so I got to meet Jacob, and he just brings so much enthusiasm to the kids. I don't know if you've been able to talk to him, but boy, his enthusiasm is actually absolutely infectious. And if you interview him or you talk to him and you don't smile after talking to him, there's something wrong with you, because he's a great baseball kid. the reason they are where they are because they're not afraid to play anybody. You know, they take their lessons, and it's like, you know, hey, we're going to go play Terre Haute North or Terre Haute South or Jasper, you know, and then after the game they realize, hey, you know, we probably didn't have a chance to win that game to begin with. Here's some positives that we did. Here's some things that we need to work on that next year, if we do, we might be able to beat them. You know, the past 3 years, they had the Pine kid who was a freshman All-American at that hat you're wearing. I'm not going to mention the name. And then the Fusers kid 2 years ago was also a great player. And so, you know, they're running through a great string of athletes. You know, the Fusers, the Hart kid's a great basketball player down there. So they're just running through a great series of athletes in all their sports. The Brenneman and the Esslinger kid, at one time they were tied for the state lead in home runs. You know, they're both big time hitters, and I think they threw their ace against us, McDonald, who we were fortunate enough to beat them 4-1. He held us to 6 hits, and we were lucky to hold them to 4 hits. But I think though that 3-hole and 4-hole hitter, the Brenneman and the Esslinger kid, can cause some problems for anybody that they face.
Man, that is one of the best offensive lineups 1 through 9 that I have seen in a long time. They just look like carbon copies of one another. I mean, they're all extremely athletic, huge shoulders, huge legs. I know they're a big football school as well, so you can definitely see that translate into the baseball. But man, if they get hot in the offensive lineup, I don't know if there's a team that can keep up with them offensively, just because of how well they are 1 through 9. Both years I've played them, they have extreme energy, which if you don't match that, it's going to be hard to keep up with that as well. But I'm blanking the name. I know he has a twin on that team as well, but number 23, Pamplin, he actually had 3 against us. He went opposite field, just a very well-rounded hitter. We tried to throw him every pitch that we had, and he was patient and got his pitch and absolutely crushed it. He is an extraordinary athlete. I'm pretty sure he's going to school for football, but he could go to school for baseball as well. I mean, he is extremely well-rounded athlete, and he carries himself a great way as well, because me and him had some conversations when I was at third base, and you can just tell he's a great kid. I've had a chance to play him twice now, and they're extremely well coached. You can tell that he is a great leader for his guys. They all enjoy playing for him. They're not in our conference, so it's usually I just get to field them on a doubleheader. We went there last year, kept it close, and this year at home it kind of got out of hand a little bit. But you can definitely tell that all the guys love playing for him. He is an extremely good leader. You can tell he makes them have energy in his own way. That's definitely the best way I can describe him. I wish I could see him more during the year, but I just get to see him twice on that doubleheader. But you can definitely tell how close those players are to him.
I have
some good words there, and I let me give a reference to what Coach Kramer was talking about with the hat when I'm interviewing him. Of course, I didn't do my research. I'm wearing an IU hat when I'm interviewing him.
I was going to say, way to go, Dan. You wore an IU hat for a Purdue Boilermaker.
Yeah, he was a big Purdue Boilermaker. Matter of fact, he played with Coach Scott, who's now, the coach for Rebuff. He played with Coach Scott at Purdue under Coach Alexander, the great Alexander coach at Purdue, who's their stadium is now named after. And I believe that was one of the years where they made it to one of the regionals. So, I mean, Coach Kramer's got a big baseball background, and that was, like I said at the beginning of the show, I talked to him for like 45 minutes. I could talk to him all day just because he's a baseball mind, and he just loves the baseball stories. And Coach Wells mentioned some names there. The Pimplin, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Pimplin, I think it is. They're brothers or possibly twins. They're for Centerville that are on fire. And then, of course, the guys from Linton-Stockton, he mentioned Brenneman and Esslinger. Brenneman was one of our players of the week this year. And he was talking about the home runs that they were hitting. At one point, they had 7 each and this was, halfway through the season, and they were tied for first in home runs. I think Esslinger kind of cooled off there, but then they got another kid that stepped up, and he ended up with 8. So, I mean, Linton-Stockton's got the bat, so this game could, the scoreboard could end up looking like a football game by the end of this game, if it wasn't for the good pitching that they have also. But let's talk about that other game, Wapahani and Iliana Christian. As far as IHSAA statistics, you're talking about a coach with 800 wins and a coach that's on his second season. But one thing I told Coach Jennings is it's just nice to have yet another great baseball program up there in Northwest Indiana, just to add to the list of all the great programs up there. And he had nothing but great things to say about Coach Vanderwood. So let's give a listen here to the coaches who know a little something about Wapahani and Iliana Christian.
I've been around, obviously, Cal baseball for a long time, and Coach Dudley does a great job every year of forming a team to coach, to play the way that he likes to coach. The two biggest names that pop up immediately, Gavin Lash is an absolute workhorse on the mound. He's intimidating for all of our guys on the hill. He's a great pitcher, very, very good competitor, never shows himself. He is just one of the better all-around players in this area right now as a junior. So he'll be definitely a force next year. And then Willman behind the plate, he is one of the best sticks in that lineup. He can create damage at any point of any game. So those are the two names that really stick out to me. Guys I circle every time, especially Lash, not just on the hill, but defensively at shortstop if he's not pitching. Then also Wellman behind the plate. Also, there's Dudley at third base, and I'm pretty sure he's their number 2 this year behind Lash. Dudley, I've known him even since when I was a freshman, when I first got on the scene as a player in Cowan. He's one of those guys that he always evolves the game in a different way every year you play him, so you never quite know how to attack him. He's one of those guys that I've continued to learn from around here and learn how he carries himself, learn how his players always seem to be very well-rounded, not just as baseball players, but as, sportsmanship. They always carry themselves in a great way. Brian has mastered the way of he always had great hitters in his lineup where he can go gap to gap, but also he always has the weapon of playing some small ball as well. So it's hard to defend against because you don't know if that 3-hole hitter might bunt on you. I mean, he's done it before in the past, but he's just done a great job over the years changing to adapt to the new style of gameplay as well. He's been around here for so long. I just keep learning from him. I'm really lucky to have him in the conference to continue to learn from him as I grow as a coach.
First, you talk about Coach Vanderwood. He's a gentleman. I mean, he's a baseball guy. He respects the game. He's an old school guy. He's been around the game at a higher level. Had a chance to and really wanted to coach at the college level, and I think he did for a brief time before he went into his family business. But he's a guy that, again, his guys are fundamental. We played him twice this year, and we beat him both times. And the second time, it was one of those dates where we played like 7 games in 6 days, and we both had no pitching left, and it was just goofy. But they're an athletic club. They're long. When you see them on the field, you're going to think these guys look like men. They're all 6'2". They're all 6'3". They've got pretty good pitching. They've got the Cochran kid, who's one of the top pitchers, I think, in the region this year. He's a hard-throwing righty. He spots up well with his slider. He can throw his fastball at any point. Or I should say he can throw his slider at any point in the count. He spots up his fastball well. Changes speeds. He's an outstanding athlete. They've got a young left-hander named Meyer, who I think is going to be a good one. We saw him earlier this year over at Purdue Northwest, and, he walked a lot of guys early on. We put up, I think, 6 or 7 on him early in the game. But as the season has gone on, this is a club that's gotten a lot better. They have really shored up their pitching. They've made routine plays in the field. They're putting the ball in play. I saw him briefly against Wheeler in the sectional championship over at Whiting. And the one thing I noticed from that team that I saw, back on Memorial Day as opposed to back in late April was a club that really shored up a lot of things defensively. And I think we both know that come tournament time, you've got to be able to pitch it and catch it.
I've been
Well, I
around.
think Wapahani may have made a run last year, but I believe it was Wheeler that they ran into. Wheeler was, I believe it was Wheeler, maybe not, that was had like 24, 25, and 2 last year. And Iliana Christian was right around the same. So that was one of the big matchups early on, or we may have seen Iliana Christian in this semi-state last year. So let's go to 1A. It's our last round, and we are at Jasper with Tecumseh and Shakamak. Man, I'd love to be able to make it to Shakamak or to Jasper today for that one. And then LaPorte. Here's another good one right here. You've got a young coach, a young coach I got a lot of respect for in Zach, and you got Tim Bourdonnais, another legend, another Hall of Famer. He's going against, and South Central was the number 1 spot, I think 2 or 3 times. They may have ended the year at number 1. Zach Coulter, by the way, I just said Zach. He's a great coach, one of the many young great coaches here in Indiana. But he's got his hands full with Lafayette Central Catholic, and these are just 4 great teams right here. Great matchups. Steve, give us a little history on these 4 teams, and we're gonna lead off after the video is going to be Tecumseh and Shakamak.
Well, let's go south to Ruxer Field and Jasper. Both of these teams were receiving votes in a poll. The game is scheduled for 1 o'clock Eastern time. Tecumseh, the Braves, are 18-12. Shakamak, the Lakers, are 16-13. We talked about how these 1A, 2A teams are playing these bigger schools. They may be taking their lumps and some losses, but they're learning from it. And so don't look past 12 and 13 losses. Think that isn't a good team, because it really is. Tecumseh, they are coached by Ted Thompson. They won the Candleton sectional. They beat Northeast Du Bois, Wood Memorial, and Springs Valley. In doing so, they won the Lagodi Regional, beat New Washington, and then Bar Reeve. And Bar Reeve was up towards the top of the poll most of the year. The sectional title this year was number 17 for Tecumseh. A lot of history there. 11 regionals. They won their only semi-state title in 2010, and they won the state championship in 2003. Now, if you watch this show and heard Dan talk me a little bit, Shakamak is history. I mean, they've got 27 sectional titles, 14 regionals. They've been to this. They got 8 semi-states. They won a couple of semi-state or state titles, 2008, 2014. Lots of state runner-ups. So they are on the state scene and have been for a long time. Jeremy Yeyer is the head coach of the Lakers. They won the Shakamak sectional by beating North Central of Farmersburg and White River Valley. They won the Morristown Regional by beating Rising Sun and Indianapolis Lutheran.
I'll tell you, they've got a couple quick stats on it before you go to the next one down there in LaPorte. The couple things on Shakamak. First of all, Coach Kramer here is going to talk about these two specifically together because he faced them both. But another interesting fact, as you were giving those Shakamak stats there, is, and this is one of those little-known bits of trivia that you can use today, is Shakamak also is number 1 in the state, has the most state title runner-ups. That's Shakamak. Shak's got the most right there, and but they got their hands full too. Tell us about Lafayette Central Catholic and the South Central Satellites.
They're at LaPorte Schreiber Field. It's an 11 a.m. Central start time. Lafayette Central Catholic is 25-6, ranked 3rd. Number 4 South Central is 21-9. The Knights of Lafayette Central Catholic, you mentioned Hall of Famer Tim Bourdonnais is their head coach. They are roaming off of their own field for the first time in the postseason because they won the Lafayette Central Catholic sectional and the regional. They beat Attica, Riverdon Park, and Covington in the sectional, and they beat Union City and Rossville in the regional. 18 sectional titles, 15 regionals, 9 semi-states, 7 state titles. 2004, 2007, 09, 10, 11, 12, and 13. The satellites of South Central, Union Mills is in LaPorte County, so it's not a very, very far drive to LaPorte for this game. Zach Coulter's an insurance salesman in LaPorte, so he's a LaPorte grad, very familiar with LaPorte. South Central won its own sectional. They beat South Bend Career Academy, La Crosse, and Oregon Davis. They won the South Bend Washington Regional, which was actually played at South Bend Clay's Field. They beat Caston and Fremont. I was at this game, and the bases were loaded with no outs for Fremont. And 3 strikeouts later, and they're celebrating a title.
Was that Farrell?
18, yes.
Yeah, Farrell's named. If you're going to be down there in or up there in LaPorte.
Farrell. He's legit. He's legit. 18 sectional titles, 5 regionals. They're looking for their first semi-state title today.
I love stories like that. You know, it's and don't tell Coach Coulter this is a David versus Goliath. You know, he doesn't care about history. He's I like this guy. He brings a ton of energy to the game, and he's one thing I wanted to mention real quick on that Tecumseh, just to drop another interesting thing, because you're talking about Tecumseh went through that Cannleton sectional. Cannleton's got one of the neatest baseball fields, I think, in Indiana. It's so unique. It's an old kind of stadium, you used to see back.
I want to get down there and look at that picture you shared with me. It looks like it's from about 1910 or something.
Yep, but then they refurbished
grandstand and everything.
Yep, and they refurbished it, and they got bucket seats. Yeah, it's just really neat. So, you know, if you're ever down south down there, it's way down there. You got to check out that stadium, check out one of their games. So let's take a listen here, starting out with Coach Kramer, and kind of emphasizing one of the things he talks about here is, like I said earlier, he's just talking about the schedule strength of these two programs right here in Tecumseh and Shakamak. And one thing we talked about these two teams, actually. I had to edit this down, Coach. If you're listening, I apologize because we're already at half an hour over time. But he talked for a lot on something that is so true, in that these are baseball towns. These are towns where kids are still out playing wiffle ball until the lights go off at night. And they're still playing catch all day, and it's just their baseball communities, old school baseball communities, and it makes for a really interesting matchup here. Let's give it a listen.
And Shakamak is a state level player every single year in 1A. You don't question that. And you asked about Tecumseh, and we played Tecumseh the past 2 years. This year it was a little lopsided because we played, that was our 3rd game of the year, and that was their 1st game of the year. They were just coming back off of spring break. So, but I could still see the talent that they had, and certainly knew that they would make a deep tournament run, just as they have. If you look at why those teams are successful, is that they are not afraid to play anybody at any time. And that's a tribute to their tradition. That's a tribute to their coaches. Shakamak's undergone a couple of coaching changes here lately, and Coach Thompson down at Tecumseh. I've talked to him 3 times this week. He's pumping me for information about Shakamak. So, just the preparation that those schools do, hats off to them, and they deserve to be where they are. No doubt about it. Their starting pitcher, Drew DuPont. He threw 2 1/3 against us. And was really, really effective, although the numbers don't indicate that, because it was probably his first time throwing in over a week. But Ted told me that was their ace, and that's who they're going to start. Offensively, We were able to hold them to 3 hits and no runs. But again, I'll go back to 2 factors. The fact that that was their first game and that it was snowing and raining. And I think that was our 4th or 5th game. So we definitely had an advantage against them. But as far as preparation goes, Coach Thompson's going to have those kids ready.
And did we back out on that? Let me fast forward again here real quick. What you keeping books, Steve? How many years is that?
We were able to hold them to 3 hits and no runs. But again, I'll go back to 2 factors. The fact that that was their first game and that it was snowing and raining. And I think that was our 4th or 5th game. So we definitely had an advantage against them. But as far as preparation goes, Coach Thompson's going to have those kids ready. I know that right off the get-go. He's going to have them ready to play, and they've been playing a lot better, of course, since the first game of the season. Like I've said before, they don't shy away from competition, and that's why they are where they're at now. We played Shakamak this year, and Shakamak beat us 5-4, and they actually had 10 hits. I'm gonna sound like I'm a Shakamak fan, and I'm actually a fan of both Shakamak and Tecumseh because I respect both of their programs, both of their coaches. I just happen to know a little bit more about Shakamak because of their geographical location. The Peg, Oscar Peg, their catcher, also one of their hardest throwing pitchers. I'm glad I don't have that decision to make by Coach Geyer because I'm not sure which way I'd go. He's their hardest throwing pitcher. He's by far their best catcher, one of their best hitters, to say the least. And then they have Brady Yeyer, who I think is either a cousin or a nephew, who was 2 for 3 against us with a home run and 3 RBIs. So, they have a lineup that is very, very, very good. They're players. They're baseball. That's Shakamak, Indiana, Jasonville, Indiana is just baseball. That's all it is. It's just baseball. If you could pick a place to go and it wasn't a section or a suburb of Indianapolis that you wanted to go for baseball, why would you not go to Jasonville, Indiana and Shakamak? Just look at the history. It's you can't beat it. You can't beat it.
That's why I had so much fun talking to Coach Kramer.
That's an endorsement right there. Huh?
It is, I tell you. And I'm a cheerleader of that area in baseball as well. And Shakamak's got history for sure. Matter of fact, I think I was maybe one off because I said at the beginning of the year, Shakamak's a team that they're going to come in with 12 or 13 losses, and you'll see them in the semi-state, and it's played out again. But once again, that's why they play the games. And Tecumseh is legit. They are a good team for sure. So that's going to be a good matchup. And I'll tell you, he mentioned a couple names there, for Shakamak anyway. Oscar Peg and Brady Yeyer. If you're going to be down there in that Jasper semi-state, keep an eye on these guys. They are legit good. Oscar Peg and Brady. Matter of fact, Brady Yeyer's batting .561. I think he's just a few knocks below Max Clark on the on-base percentage, and I think he's got 10 home runs. So they can flat rake. So that's going to be a good game.
Something tells me those guys and probably some of their teammates will leave with some of the field with them.
Well, and those
guys aren't afraid to get dirty, getting in the dirt.
Yeah,
it's fun to watch guys like that.
That's right. They're blue collar. They are blue collar baseball through and through. I think Peg is going to Lincoln Trail. Yeyer's only a sophomore. So he hasn't committed anywhere yet. But there's a lot of colleges down there in near Jasper, and there's going to be a lot of coaches there. I mean, every year down there, you'll see the coach for Evansville and USI, and so they're going to see some good baseball being played down there. Let's talk about our last one, and that is the Lafayette Central Catholic Knights, headed up by Hall of Fame coach Tim Bourdonnais, and the South Central of Union Mills Satellite, coached by the young gun Zach Coulter. I like this matchup too. Let's hear for some people that know these two teams.
Great guy, young coach. He's got a lot of fire. They've got a really good team. Farrell's a great arm. They're going to give LCC all they want. They're going to play hard.
But he's a good, young, tough coach. His kids are kids who model their coach. He's tough. He's a LaPorte guy, so he understands tradition. He understands fundamentals. He understands old school type baseball. And this is a club really, they're not super flashy. And now, granted, we beat them pretty good, but it was the last game of the year going into the sectionals. It was a late pickup. We were both just looking for a game because of all the rainouts we had this year. So we beat them pretty good. But you can see this is a club that's got a lot of talent. They've got the Farrell kid who's committed to Kentucky. He's a big-time bat for him. I was really impressed with his swing. I know he has done some closing for him on the mound as well. He's an outstanding pitcher from what it sounds like. We didn't see him. But, this is a club that impresses me. They've had some talented players over the years. You think of the Schmack kid playing now for his dad, Brian, up at Valparaiso University. They're just a solid program. They were in the top 5 in the state in 1A for most of the year. I think they were actually number 1 going into the tournament, if I'm not mistaken. So, they're a club that, they're like I said, they're not super flashy. They're just going to come out and play fundamental baseball, and that's typical of what you would expect from Zach because, like I said, he's a LaPorte kid.
Well, Bourdonnais, he's an outstanding coach. They played us. I think the final was 3-2, and I mean they're going to play hard all the way to the last out. They're a club that they're not going to beat themselves, and they're going to do everything fundamentally right. And Bourdonnais, he'll bunt on you 10 times in a row if you're not careful, and he'll come after you. But he knows how to win, and that's going to be a great ball game, great matchup.
LCC and Shackmack, I think it is. Is that right? Or
LCC and South.
LCC and South. That's right. Okay.
So it's going to be two good arms will be going against each other. Two pretty good defenses and two really good coaches. So yet again, a game that may not be decided by 7 innings.
So there is our coverage of all games, and we will. Steve, you said you're going to LaPorte. I'm going to Mooresville. There's going to be some good games in all of them, and you said there's a little bit of chance of rain, primarily around Kokomo, maybe something in Jasper or in LaPorte, but mainly that central part. So
looks like it's late afternoon if it happens. Thunderstorm chances, but I hope that gets smaller and smaller as time goes on.
I'm checking the old school radar here out the window, and it's good enough for me to head anywhere in the state. So, folks, get out and get to a game. Don't forget, we're going to be here Friday morning and Saturday morning to talk about the state finals that come from today's matchups, and we'll have the video and audio fixed. But until then, folks, safe travels as you go all over the state to watch baseball across Indiana. Take care.